to our phone now.
My name is Amare, and you're listening to Smooth 98.1. Don't go anywhere.
Wow. This Akwa Ibom story is deep. My goodness. Are we live? Oh, good morning. Please let me know whenever we go. Thank you. Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. I am Ayo Myro SA. It is time for today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. This is where we bring you detailed analysis of today's national news headline stories, and I have the company of Mr. C to analyze the stories with me today. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Lagos.
Excellent. Now, if you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love for you to do so. We're streaming right now on YouTube, so you can head on to youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos, so that you can watch what's going on in the studio as well as listen to us. If you're in the comfort of your home on this lovely holiday morning, you might want to do that. You could also send us a message on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981, or tweet at us at smooth981FM. Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981. We have some interesting stories, important stories to get through, Mr. C. I hope time would permit us to get through as many. But I'll take the headlines, I'll read all so that you can know what we have, and then we'll go one by one to analyze. North kicks as Afenifere, others back southern governors on cattle grazing ban, according to the Guardian newspaper. On COVID-19, Lagos places 13 countries on watch list to prevent third wave. Police officer, civil servant linked to Akwa Ibom job seekers killers speak on suspicious call records. Amechi makes U-turn as panel investigates Bala Usman for insubordination. Judicial legislative workers give fresh conditions to suspend strike. Boko Haram demands 28 million naira for 52 Adamawa abductees. Poor electricity supply worsens as national grid collapses. And final one from Punch: will keep Baba Ijesha until Johnson resumes, according to the police. Right, let's start off with our first one. North kicks as Afenifere, others back southern governors on cattle grazing ban. So we talked about this story yesterday, after the 4-hour meeting in Delta State of southern governors, headed by the governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, who's the chairman of the Southern Governors Forum. After which they came out with a 12-point communique, part of which was to ban open grazing. Initially, from the report yesterday, it looked as if the Mieti Allah, Makaban had, were in support of this. However, things have kind of turned now, as a number of northern spokespeople have come out to say it wasn't right. Someone said they didn't consult Fulani leaders. Others have said if they must do this, southern governors must provide land for Fulani bandits. I don't know why they use bandits here. Fulani or herdsmen to graze their cattle, and others have said it was hasty. They shouldn't. It's not. It's not right. But tell us what you think about this, Mr. C.
Okay, so for the benefits of the listeners listening out there, we need to backtrack. In February 2021, the Nigerian Governors Forum passed a resolution banning open grazing. Now, the Nigerian Governors Forum consists of the 36 state governors in the Federation. Fast forward yesterday, the southern governors went further and said within the southern states, they will not allow open grazing of cattle. Now, predictably, Yeti Allah and the other allied cattle rearers associations and their reps, including some northern leaders, have come out with statements which personally are very irresponsible.
Mm.
How do you, and it smacks of an entitlement spirit, you insist that, first of all, some chap who was the former executive secretary of the National Health Insurance
I mean, I
Scheme.
wondered why he had the.
Now,
he
I
had
don't know what
something to say.
competence he has to speak on matters like this. I want
Apart from, of course, being from that part
I
of
want to believe that he's a health professional,
Mhm.
so he should stick to matters of health. Now, he insists that they should have spoken, consulted Fulani leaders first. Excuse me, what does that mean? Who are the Fulani leaders? Why do they need to consult you? The southern governors, under the Land Use Act, are the trustees of all the lands contained within the southern part of Nigeria, except for lands that have invested in the federal government. They do not need to consult you. The Fulani, these so-called Fulani leaders are not members of the southern region, even though under the constitution you can live anywhere. But they're not obligated to speak to them. Now, we must remember something. Cattle rearing is a private enterprise. Those cattle, the cattle roaming all over Nigeria, have owners. They didn't fall from the sky.
Mm.
Now, these owners, we don't know whether they pay taxes, but that's neither here nor there. Why should state funds derived from taxes paid by individuals and corporate organizations be used to provide ranches for private businesses?
Would you not say, though, Mr. C, that it's part of, if the government wanted to have an enabling business environment scheme, would that not be part of it?
No, I'm sorry. Enabling business scheme for what? If you build ranches for
That they would
cattle,
pay. Let's assume they build ranches and you'd have to pay rent, for instance.
will you build fish farms for people who want to go into fish farming? Will you build poultry farms for people who want to go rear poultry? Where does it stop? It's not like Nigeria is awash with cash right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a private business. And two, saying that it's Mieti Allah, typically, in their response said that it's a policy that cannot be enforced. Now, the reason why they can make an inflammatory statement like that is because they've been treated with kid gloves in the past. Governors, elected governors of 17,000 states, come up with a uniform policy, and the secretary of some association says it cannot be enforced.
So let's even see the merit of that statement. How will this be enforced in the southern states?
Good, fantastic. Now, most of the southern states have already passed laws banning open grazing. Now, what they're saying is we're going to start strictly enforcing those provisions.
Okay.
Now, excuse me, if you want to rear your cattle, please can you stay in the north?
But okay, well, that is that not against the constitution?
No, no.
Free movement.
No, free movement provided you do not cause damage to property or loss of lives. And so far, that has not been the case. Now, why is Mieti Allah, why are the cattle rearing associations opposed to building their own ranches? Fund your businesses. We don't care what you're doing. We're not interested. Fund your, all over the world, cattle are not taken from point to point on foot. They are placed in ranches, you feed them there, you grow. And that is the modern way to do it. Why do they not want to adapt?
Okay, so I hear you with regards to the government shouldn't be held responsible for providing or funding these ranches.
Yes.
But can they be supported, even in provision of loans? Because this is an issue. We cannot turn away from this.
So
And there's still going to be that back and forth. They're saying they're open to ranches, but you should provide, the least you can do is provide us with land for ranching. What do you think about that?
No, Ayo, provide them for land. Provide them with land. What does that mean? They won't pay for the land or what? How does that work? Land everywhere is expensive. They should, look, it's an investment in their business.
Okay, so
And since the federal government is not a shareholder in the cattle rearing business, at least officially, so if the federal government was to provide the land, would they pay to use the land? And then where does that stop? If the fish farmers, the poultry guys, and the snail farmers come up tomorrow and say, okay, we want you guys to fund us too.
all right. I mean, we could go on. This is such a big topic, and we have other big topics this morning. A number of things just going on my mind, just going through my mind. Because sometimes, Mr. C, we have to agree, it wouldn't always be white and black, especially when it's a security concern. So you might make certain, discretionary allowances for a group of people for peace to reign.
If they had conducted themselves properly in the past, yes. But Miyetti Allah Hauta Kore has been a very militant organization, and for reasons best known to the federal government, they have continued to treat that group with kid gloves.
All right. Cisco Delgado says this open grazing should not be a matter of national importance because this method of cattle rearing is not the modern way. And then Mr. C is just hitting the note, says Ikenna, thank you so much. This is a private business. Government should not be funding it, and he's accusing me of being playing devil's advocate in my questions. I have to balance the conversation, Ikenna. You may not like it, but I have to balance it. All right, let's move on to our next story. COVID-19. Lagos places 13 countries on watch list to prevent third wave. The Lagos state government has placed the United States, Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, Togo, South Africa, Canada, France, Germany, Uganda, the Netherlands, Cameroon, Angola, and Rwanda on a watch list as the state is working to prevent a third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. I had to mention each of the names, Mr. C, because I think it's quite important for us to note these countries. Some people might be planning their holiday, I've seen a number of deals. United States is listed in this and Tanzania, Kenya. These are holiday destinations. And so it's just for people to perhaps reconsider until things settle a bit, because they've identified reasons why we're hoping there won't be a third wave, we're praying there won't be a third wave. But they've said that laxity amongst citizens, false sense of security, and non-adherence to guidelines are likely issues that could lead to the third wave. Please speak to us on this story.
Okay, so sometime last week, the federal government banned travelers from Brazil, India, and Turkey. The import of that ban is that if prospective travelers into Nigeria from any of these countries will not be allowed to enter the country. Now, the Lagos State government has gone a step further and has placed citizens or travelers from 13 countries on a watch list. Now, their position is to prevent a third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic in Lagos State specifically. It will be good to ensure that variations or mutations of the COVID-19 virus from these 13 countries do not enter into the Lagos airspace, so to speak. Now, you spoke about non-adherence to the measures.
Yeah.
Now, it is, so two things. I think a number of reasons can explain this. One, the death rate dropped significantly, and some people have formed the opinion, rightly or wrongly, that it's not as deadly as they say it is. That's one. Two, it is extremely difficult wearing a face mask consistently throughout the day. It is extremely difficult. It's not comfortable, and that would also explain the reluctance of some people to use it. Now, also, there's a reluctance on the part of the state to even enforce these regulations. And maybe it's because they lack the will or they lack the manpower, but it's what it is. Now, we pray that there's no third wave, but I've read reports which I've not been able to confirm yet that the Indian variation of this pandemic is already in Lagos. Well, we hope that the Lagos state government gets a hand on it. And in related news, they've received 57,000 fresh doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, and which will be administered to 27,000 new patients, which is good news. And we hope that the exercise will be seamless, and that more people will be encouraged or will encourage themselves to take the vaccine. Now, it is important that we avoid a third wave because we struggle to deal with the first wave specifically, and the economy is still trying to recover from that. And most companies are now trying to return fully to work. If a third wave hits us, it's not going to be fun.
You can't, honestly, it doesn't even bear
because
thinking.
I suspect it will be a mutation of the original virus, and I have my suspicions about the existing vaccines out there, whether they can deal with these mutations, because my understanding was the original virus was used in the clinical trials, but by the time these vaccines were hitting the market, the mutations had come out. Now, of course, the manufacturers suggest or indicate that their vaccines can deal with the mutations. I have my doubts.
Thank you so very much. So, in essence, prevention is certainly better than cure.
Yes.
Yes, you might have taken your first dose and perhaps even second dose, but like Mr. C mentioned, these were developed before these strains mutated, and you do not want to be, caught in a position that you didn't prepare yourself for. So please, I know, like he said, that masks are very uncomfortable, but honestly, like people say as well, dying is even more uncomfortable. So rather wear your masks. Maintain social distance. It's a holiday period. If you don't have to go out, please stay at home. Stay home. That's the safest place. You can sanitize, wash your hands as often as possible, and let's all be responsible. Let's move on to our next story. This is a big one, Mr. C, and very lengthy. And I can actually encourage everyone to read this report in the Premium Times. Police officer, civil servant linked to Akwa Ibom job seekers killer speak on suspicious call records. A number of people might have heard of the slain job seeker Inwubong Umoren in Akwa Ibom. A girl who just wanted a job put up a status on Twitter. Someone contacted her on her tweet. The person didn't even DM her. Just put on her tweet and said, "Oh, meet me here if you need a job." And she went. Unfortunately, she fell into the hands of a man who's confessed to being a serial killer, and that's his name is Frank Akpan, a serial killer and rapist. Now, we thought it was just a surface level, another crime committed, a serial killer, someone who's mentally unstable. But investigations have revealed what is potentially an organ trafficking ring in Akwa Ibom. What's even more disturbing are some of the actors who have been identified, and they've been identified because of phone calls that were traced to them from Frank Akpan's telephone within the time frame when this crime happened. Two of them that have been mentioned in this article are Messrs. Ezugo and Efyong. Oh, sorry, Mr. Efyong, a civil servant at the Federal Ministry of Niger Delta, and Mr. Ezeogo, who heads the police division that supervised the arrest of Mr. Akpan. Now, these two men have responded and given a reason, perhaps, why their numbers were found on Frank Akpan's phone, where they had exchanged telephone calls. Mr. C, please, I hope I've been able to just give a background to this, very deep, but please take us to the story.
Okay, so very quickly, quick timeline. On the 29th of April, the late Inyobong Umorin was invited for a job interview somewhere in Akwa Ibom State. Now, on April 29th, same day, her Lagos-based friend Umo Udwak raised an alarm that she could no longer track or locate her friend. Now, the police waited until April 30th before they swung into action. And this is the reason. When you file a missing persons report, by law, the police waits 24 hours to see whether the adult will return. At the expiration of the 24-hour deadline, if the adult has not returned, then they then commence investigations. Now, on the 30th of April, the suspect's father, Mr. Akpan's father, was arrested. And 48 hours later, on the 1st of May, the suspect was arrested. Now, the suspect confessed or admitted to being a serial rapist and kidnapper and took them to his father's compound where he had buried the remains of Inyobongomuren. Fantastic. Now, an investigation carried out by Newswire magazine would suggest that there's more to this story than meets the eye. Now, the suspect made calls to the police officer supervising the team that arrested him. Now, the first question that
he made this call before he was arrested.
Before he was arrested. Yeah. Now, and then he made calls to Mr. Kufre Efyong. Now, Mr. Kufre Efyong is his big cousin. Now, the question is, how would a suspect have the personal number, or why would he have the personal number of the police team looking for him to arrest him? And on one of the calls, they spoke for 93 seconds. What did they speak about? Now, calls were also made to his cousin. Now, the cousin says that he wasn't initially aware what Mr. Akpan had done, and when he was now aware, the calls were designed to lure him out so that he could be arrested. The police officer, Mr. Ezugo, says that he's at liberty under the law to do all that he can to ensure that the suspect is arrested. I don't understand what that means. Now, there is information suggesting there might be a human organ harvesting ring in that state.
Beyond that, I think it's also the links that the government and the police are aware.
Yes.
Allegedly.
So it's something that needs to be investigated, and it would be advisable if a different police unit, preferably from Abuja,
Mm.
that is not seemingly part of this network, investigates the matter. Because what I suspect now with this information, we will wake up sometime this week or next week and hear that he had some heart problem, some health condition that was undiagnosed, unidentified, and he's dead. Because everything now revolves around this guy. So if I will, so imagine the sponsors of this network, or the members of this network, they will do everything within their powers to ensure the guy dies. Now, it speaks to a larger problem. Globally, there is a demand for body parts.
Yeah.
And in countries like America and the Western world, there's usually an organ waiting list, a waiting list for organ donors, and it could take years. And some people who need vital body parts transplanted cannot afford to wait. So because of demand, you have networks like this springing up all over the world. It's not a Nigerian problem.
Yeah.
And they aim to satisfy this illegal demand. And this is where abductions, missing persons report, you just find out that some people have been missing, no explanation, and nothing can be done. But when you find them, some parts are taken out. And then the misnomer is they were killed for ritual purposes. I'm sorry, there's nothing like that.
No, you can't say there's nothing like that. It's not always like that. Because even in this article, it mentions that it's also suspected that it was used for the ritual, for politicians who use them for ritual purposes.
Right now, there is no general election in the country. There's no state election in that state. There's no election coming up.
Sustaining power.
So,
anyways, we need to move on because we're out of. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Such a sad story, such an unfortunate incident. And I know that this is definitely not the last that we're going to hear of this. As reports unfold, or as details unfold, we'll certainly bring it to Freshly Pressed 981. Now, Uche from Ikeja, thank you. Yes, the article was written by David Hundeyin for Newswire. I said this report is in the Premium Times, and the Premium Times, like Mr. C has mentioned, did acknowledge David Newswire as being as saying that report was based on that report. So thank you very much. Cisco Delgado says, Mr. C, you're correct. This case will come to an end just like that. No, he didn't. He was saying he shouldn't. No, let's not conclude yet, please. Let the investigation be carried out deeply. Absolutely, we agree with you. Let's go on to another big story, Mr. C. Amechi makes U-turn as panel investigates Bala Usman for insubordination. This is another development. We spoke about this yesterday. And now Minister of Transportation, Honorable Rotimi Amechi, has made a U-turn as the panel of inquiry he set up to investigate the alleged fall in operating surpluses by the Nigerian Port Authority under the leadership of the suspended MD CEO, Mrs. Hadiza Bala Usman. Now, the probe is going to be for insubordination as against the earlier claim of not remitting operating surplus of 165 billion naira to the Consolidated Revenue Fund account. This day has learned. Please break this story down. In Nigeria, it's almost like the more you look, the less you see. I don't even understand. But please, let's break this down for people listening.
Okay, for our listeners, very quickly, does this story sound familiar? No, Mago, Ibrahim Mago. Similar circumstances, all sorts of allegations, smoke, plenty of smoke. At the end of the day, we don't have the verdict of Mago, but he's no longer in office. So let's get down to brass tacks. The Minister of Transport alleged, or in a letter to the president, suggested that M hadn't remitted funds to the Federation account. Now, on the basis of that, he got the president's attention because we understand that the president is very upset when agencies do not remit funds to the Federal Treasury account. So the Hadiza Usman was suspended and a probe panel was set up. Now, as far as the minister is concerned, work done. This panel is going nowhere. It's now switched from non-remittance to insubordination, and it revolves around some contracts worth 1.5 billion US dollars. Now, he wanted those contracts awarded to companies which reportedly had his backing. Now, she bypassed the minister and sent a memo straight to the president through the chief of staff and suggested or provided reasons why those contracts should not be given to
The
those
firms.
companies. And the president had initially given directives that those contracts should be given to them. She bypassed that directive, and the AGF supported her, saying that those contracts should not be given to those companies. Now, the honorable minister was understandably and naturally upset, and this is where we are now. She's going to be tried on the case of insubordination, and for that, I'm not sure she has a defense, because under the regulations directing ministries, departments, and agencies, the NPA is an agency under the Ministry of Transport. And if you're the chief executive of that agency, you report to the minister. And for whatever reason, you are not supposed to bypass him and go straight to the president. But it then speaks to a larger problem. Same issue, we now have two conflicting positions from the president. In one scenario, the president says, oh yeah, okay, go ahead, you can give them the contract. In another scenario, same contract, he has a different position. What that speaks to is a seeming disorder within the presidency. How do you have two different positions on the same matter?
To be fair, Mr. C,
Yes.
he hasn't confirmed his position yet. This is just from the different parties' perspective. Mr. Amechi saying that the president has said they should award. Mrs. Bala Usman saying that she got. So until I said there are two sides until and then the truth.
No. So let me correct you on that. If the president did not give any directive, she would not have had a basis to go back and say, in spite of your directive, these are the reasons why they should not be complied with.
Okay.
There was a prior directive, and she had issues complying with that directive. So she goes back, she doesn't speak to the minister about it, she goes straight to the president. Now, it is clear that beyond all this smoke, there are real issues between the honorable minister and Adisa Usman.
Yes.
Good luck to both of them.
Yeah.
But going forward, and it speaks to a lack of strong institutions in the land and a culture of impunity. Both of them acted unilaterally, and they're not speaking to themselves. Now, in all of this, where is the board of the NPA? What is their position on this matter? I haven't heard the position, and it will be very interesting to hear what they have to say.
All right, thank you very much. Fatai from Lasamaja, I'll go through your comments very in a moment, but let me go to the next story because of our time. Judicial legislative workers give fresh conditions to suspend strike. By the way, JUSUN, which is the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, and Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, PASAN, have been on strike for over 1 month. The unions are seeking the full implementation of the constitutionally guaranteed financial autonomy for state legislatures and judiciaries. Please tell us, Mr. C, what the fresh conditions are.
So the fresh conditions raised by JUSUN are: one, all monies due to the judiciary since January this year that are still in the custody and possession of the governors should be released immediately. Two, they're not going to negotiate the provisions of the constitutions, and they insist on the enforcement of those provisions. And that the same way money is shared at the federal level, it should be shared at the state level. That, in a summary, is their position. And I would like to seize this opportunity to remind the governors they took an oath pursuant to the provisions of this Constitution and the Oath Act to live and work according to the law. Therefore, they cannot use their whims and caprices to determine what happens. If the law has stipulated a course of action and they're unhappy with it, then what they need to do is to amend the provisions of the law to fit their whims and caprices. But for as long as the law states what the course of action should be, they're bound to follow it.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Fatai is saying that the Premium Times report was meant to suggest that the conclusions or insinuations made by the earlier media outfit, that's Newswire, is most likely wrong. I get you, Ms. Fatai. However, we focused on and thanks for mentioning that, but we focused on the detail because we've actually never spoken about it on Freshly Pressed. So thank you. Let's move on to our next story. Boko Haram demands 28 million naira for 52 Adamawa abductees. Guardian. Boko Haram terrorists have demanded 28 million naira as a ransom for the 52 residents of Kwakwe community in Hong local government or council in Adamawa State who were abducted a month ago in a raid. When is this going to end, Mrs. C? You know, like that's why they say they don't negotiate with terrorists, because once you do one,
See, I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous. And the events of Tuesday at Aso Rock
yeah.
just shows that we're like a ship without a captain.
What event on Tuesday?
They reported they confirmed burglary.
Oh,
yeah. So
they attempted, they didn't succeed.
Ayo, please.
But they didn't
Please.
succeed.
Ayo, that attempt was a psychological blow, and it's a collective insult to the whole of Nigeria. That the seat of power, that individuals could actually contemplate that stunt, is shocking.
So, are you saying that we should continue paying these demands or these sums for release?
The reality is, all along we've been paying.
So we should just continue.
It's a money making venture for these guys. I don't know whether they don't use they don't coat their notes with ink so that we can trace them later, because they just seem happy. These guys abduct Nigerians, money is raised, it's given to them. It would suggest, or an inference could be made, that some security operatives are in on this deal, and there's no seeming effort to rescue these Nigerians. It must be traumatic being continually abducted, and the fallout of stunts like this is the food crisis will continue to escalate, because most of these guys live in the north where we're supposed to be growing our food. Do not forget that the rains haven't been as plentiful as they should have been.
True.
And we're heading for very interesting times.
All right, very quickly, just a comment on this one, because it made headlines. Poor electricity supply worsens as national grid collapses. I was reluctant to take this because I was like, it's almost non-news anymore for the national grid to collapse. What's the issue?
So issues, one, we shouldn't have a central grid. That's the truth. We should have decentralized grids. This is the second time this year and the 29th time since 2018. It shows we're still not learning any lessons. And
do we still have the officials in office? Should someone be sacked? Should someone be held responsible?
We have the officials in office. If the headman who has lost control of this country is still in office.
No, you can't say that, Mr. C.
No, I will say that, and I'll tell you why I will say that. Okay. Insecurity all over name a region of Nigeria that is security day.
Yes, they say they're in charge. They're just being tactical about it. So let's take the government's position on this.
What does that mean? You're in charge. Where's the evidence?
They don't want collateral damage, according to the report by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, yesterday. I mean, I do understand where you're coming from, but thank you very much for today. Mr. C has been our analyst today. You can find him at Mr. C on Twitter, and you can find us at Smooth981FM on Twitter. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. In a few minutes, we're going to be crossing over to the entertainment side of life in Grapevine 981. I have James and Oris joining me then. You need some good music, a great conversation, then do join us here on Smooth 98.1.
The headlines.
Please, can you end?
Stories.
Thank you, everyone.